Hello, everyone. So I made a little video yesterday as well on the eclipse that would be for today. But today it's a rainy day here, so we probably in New South Wales, we probably won't get to see the eclipse in full swing. Apparently in Western Australia, they're able to see that today. But unless we clear up, we won't be able to see it. But I thought I would do a little video, and today, because it's raining and I don't have anyone actually booked in for a reading, I thought, well, I've got the time and Archie and I are just being creative today, so I thought I would share a little bit more about the mythology and the side of the eclipses from mythology. So I'm just going to read from this book, Mythical Astrology, because I love this book, on the moon's nodes. So, to the ancients, an eclipse was one of the most awesome events in the celestial sphere. Seemingly without warning, the sun or moon would begin to disappear, as if it were being consumed by some invisible entity. Because villagers, townsfolk, people were so terrified by eclipses, and knowledge of such event put the knower in a position of power. Thus, priests, astrologers, and shamans and specialists of all kinds studied the secret of the eclipse cycle. Some researchers believe the ancient monuments, such as Stonehenge, contain simple but effective indicators to measure the cycle. Throughout medieval and Renaissance times, astrologers continued to regard eclipses with such trepidation, predicting drastic changes in political affairs as a result. Modern astrologers, however, pay little heed to eclipses, except for some specialists whom most are likely to disagree with each other. Considering the powerful effect that eclipses have had on human consciousness, it seems clear that they must be important from a mythological point of view, but few people realize that the mythology of eclipses exists, or that the eclipse cycle can easily be noted in the birth chart by examining the moon's nodes. Like the sun and other planets, the moon travels across a band of the sky called the ecliptic, i.e. the apparent path of the sun. But the moon may sometimes cross the band of the ecliptic to the north and to the south. In fact, it does this every 13 days, first to the north, then to the south, and so on. These 2 points of intersection, north and south, always lie directly opposite each other by sign and house and are called the moon's nodes. Each time the moon crosses the ecliptic, it does so at a slightly earlier degree of longitude. Hence, the moon's nodes appear to move or travel in a backwards motion, i.e. in retrograde. It is an astronomical fact that the solar and lunar eclipse can only occur when the sun or moon is in conjunct with one of the nodes. The moon's nodes, therefore, are the indicators of an eclipse. Okay, I just want to stop on there. So, a lot of astrology people today, as I knew would happen, is talking about this being a total solar eclipse, which it isn't. I know it said most astrologers would then disagree with each other, but it's so the moon's nodes are the things that set the ecliptic, and you can see here that our north node is at 4 degrees Taurus, and that the sun and the moon are at 29 degrees of Aries. So their sun and moon are exact at 29 degrees Aries, which is the last degree of Aries. But the sun and moon are always exact conjunct on a new moon. So that's not what sets the eclipse. What sets an eclipse is that it's close to the nodes, and it's 5 degrees apart from the nodes, but that doesn't create a total eclipse. A total eclipse would have to be very close, like even exact conjunction, for me to qualify as a total eclipse. And I think for most astrologers that would know. So it is an eclipse, absolutely, but it's not a total eclipse, but it's still a very powerful one because of the 29th degree. So when something's at the 29th degree, it always intensifies. Sometimes astrologers will say it's intensifying at the 29th degree, but it's also starting to tire. So the energy is also starting to exhaust itself. So then when we look at the archetype of what we're looking at, which is Aries, and you can see also the whole eclipse in mythology what's tricky about today's eclipse is that because it's not a total eclipse, but because the node is actually, the north node is actually in Taurus, it's in a different sign. And this is culminating at the last degrees of Aries. So we're talking about the mythology coming from two different archetypes, which is good. I mean, it adds some color to it, but it's also it has to add a lot more of the backstory then, because we're actually talking about the energies of Taurus a lot here, because the eclipse is set with the nodal axis. So you can't, a lot of astrologers that are putting up just some like writing about the eclipse are talking about the Aries part, because this is where the sun and the moon's happening, this conjunction at 29 degrees Aries. But we also need on this eclipse to talk about Taurus, because that's where the node is, and it's also making a square to Pluto. Nodes in square, when Pluto squares the nodes, this is always huge in evolutionary astrology. Pluto square the nodes is probably one of the biggest things that you would look for. So if you're talking about a birth, if there was a baby born today and you're looking at their birth chart and they've got this arrangement, which all babies born this year are going to have Pluto square the nodes, because even when Pluto moves back to, even when Pluto starts to retrograde after June back into the last couple of degrees of Capricorn, it's still going to make a square to the nodes, because by that stage the nodes will be in Libra South Node and Aries North Node, because they would have moved backwards. See, this is, the nodes are, like it says, appears to be in retrograde. That's why it's in red here. So all babies born this year are going to have Pluto square the nodes, which is considered to be a trauma signature of a soul, like a soul fracture. Powerful potential there for that, for the individual, if we're talking about an individual's chart, to actually have huge transformation, and to bring, restore their power, by bringing in their soul, like by soul retrieval. Not bringing, I mean, the soul's there anyway, but when it's a soul fracture, it just means that part of the soul has actually, through the trauma, has experienced a rupture. The soul is always pure, whole, and pure source, and can never not be whole. But the incarnating soul, when it's experienced a lot of trauma, can cause what appears to be a rupture in the incarnating soul. And when that heals and the soul's brought back into that essence of healing, and then they can reactivate their power and their potential. So there's huge potential as well for a person to recover from whatever the skip step is. And in this case, when it's Pluto, it's even more intense, and actually go on to be restoring their power and claiming their power, and actually being a real powerful asset to helping be of service to the world in light and love. But it is a fracture. So when we're talking about it on a collective level, like a transit for the whole of a lot of us as humanity, then we're talking about our collective wound, a big karmic collective trauma signature. And that's what it is. So these eclipses actually really powerful for that reason. I would say not the reason that it's a total eclipse, but the reason this one's so powerful is because it's at 29 degrees and it's got a square to the node. So there's a huge opportunity there for, like, there's for the collective to do some major healing in that trauma signature, where the collective soul, the collective incarnating soul on earth, is able to be purified and healed. And how it's done, we're going to be looking at it through more the lens of the Aries, and also the Taurus North Node. So Okay, so that's what I thought I would share a little bit about. So Aries in its archetype in itself, sometimes when I look at this, you see like exhaustion. Like today, some people might feel actually physically exhausted. When it's starting to tire at the 29th degree, it also brings in that like that last surge of energy. So Aries coming in with that impulsive surge to like actually change things quickly when we get to a point in human evolution that we realize, or for a large portion of people, when we realize that, oh, actually things are like things are not what we've been conditioned to believe they are. And then when the conditioning of the collective is ready to break free through this signature, then the Aries wants to come in and quickly create some sort of change and like actually put something into action to create a lot of change, which can actually end up being more chaotic if it's really impulsive without a lot of thought. But we know through the Aries archetype as well that the Aries is the warrior, and it does have the courage to go in actually and try to be that mighty, courageous warrior that's able to come in and help in service to light and love and help make a change. So you can see a lot of things going on today. For some people, it might be just this feeling of exhaustion that they don't really know where to act, or they don't know how to act, or and then you might also see it as people that are like just got this uprise and surge of energy that they realize that the path that we've been on through the last epoch is not the path that we're destined to be on now as a collective. And so this Aries energy can come in as this like hope and surge of energy to actually create some sort of positive change, and also the courage to actually do that if the soul, the collective, is actually in alignment to where we're supposed to be headed. And as we know, the reason that everything is so big now is because karma is speeding up so fast. So in the past, when people would use like karma, and then they would be expecting, or the word karma, and they would usually be talking about someone hoping some karma catches up with someone that has done something that's considered negative, and they're hoping that they would see karma get that person, or pay, that they'd have to pay that karma back quickly. But actually that might not show up and be restored for lifetimes and lifetimes, because karma doesn't have to really be balanced in what we consider on earth, where we look at time in a linear fashion, but we're only like making up time because time isn't real. But in the whole scheme of things, karma doesn't have to be rebalanced until the whole of the person, like throughout the whole person's incarnation cycle. But what's happening now on Earth, because we are moving into a brand new epoch and a brand new 26,000 year cycle, as well as a new age, the age of Aquarius, which is a 2,160 year cycle, as well as a new matriarchal cycle, which is usually patriarchal, and matriarchal cycles are around 6,000 years each. And because we're coming into brand new one of everything, and all these cycles are beginning to reset, we as a collective need to clear and purge the trauma and the shadow states from the past epoch. And souls, a lot of souls have, all souls in a way that are here for the great change to some degree, have probably, some people are just paying out their own personal karmic cycle, as is always usually the case, that people have personal karmic contracts that they've agreed to work on as they incarnate, that they agreed to work on before they incarnated. And then souls that are working at higher states of evolution, and that are refining themselves in a higher state of evolution, will choose to be the one that will put their hand up to do their part of the collective, like to heal the ancestral lineage. And then I guess what's been known as star seeds or light workers, and souls that are sent here, I guess, as a mission. And some really evolved souls that are refining at a higher degree have also put their hand up to agree to help cleanse a lot of the collective trauma and collective karma. And so because there's so much going on that needs to be purged from the last epoch and needs to be cleansed and purified, karma now is speeding up. And that's what I mean by speeding up. It's fast now. So the lessons are coming in fast. The karma playing out is happening fast. So if someone has an action that's seen as that's seen as negative, then usually it will manifest quickly as a reaction much faster now in their life. And everything's sort of speeding up karmically, because at the end times, the karma needs to be at the surface. It needs to be seen, purified and purged, so that we can do that purging before we move into a new earth in kind of like a new slate, with a clean slate. And so Aries the Aries brings in that energy of like, where the person's like, okay, even if it's not with a lot of what we see on earth as a lot of hindsight, it comes in with that warrior spirit. And it's like, okay, let's do this. Let's put this into action. Let's cleanse that. But when we come across and look at it from the perspective, even through which gateways we have, so we can see sun at 3, I just haven't put in the exact eclipse time, but at 3, the sun is at in the 3rd hexagram, line 4, and the moon 3rd hexagram, line 3, on what I've put it on, but it would be exact at some point. So at 12:40 Sydney Eastern Standard Time, I think it was exact. So we would get, or 12:30 or something like that. So we would get both of them 3rd hexagram, line 3. But we can see that's where the sun and moon are. That's why they're exact. But then you can see here on the north node here is that 27 hexagram. It's not even in the same gate or the same hexagram. Anyway, when we look at the 3rd, so this is where the sun and moon, the gateway or the hexagram in the I Ching, that the sun and moon are going through. We know it's 29 degrees Aries, and it's also through the I Ching lens, it's through this 3rd gateway, or through, if we come across to the gene keys, then this 3rd hexagram, in the spectrum, with all the hexagrams, all 64 being, as Richard Rudd saw them, in a spectrum of consciousness, going from the shadow through to the gifts, through to the city, or the highest possible expression of that gate and highest possible potential. So the 3rd, the shadow, is chaos. So I am only interested in my own survival. So this is where it's hitting, and at that 29 degrees, it's hitting this 3rd hexagram, and the shadow is chaos. So if people are only considering their own survival right now, and they're only worried about, because Aries, even though it's the courage and the warrior and a person that's willing to stand up, if it's in its higher application or its highest expression, but in its lower expression, it is about prime survival. Like Aries is first, so it is just the prime urge for survival. So if people are literally worried about prime survival at the moment, and they're only looking out for themselves, rather than seeing that actually the end times are the end times, and the world as we knew it, and the infrastructure is starting to collapse. If people are only worried about it from their own perspective, rather than seeing that this is actually what's happening for all of humanity, then it is chaotic, because people will be going in, doing what they need for their own survival, and not actually considering that this is actually a whole process for humanity to actually work through. And that's where this trauma comes in, because Aquarius is about it can be about the division and the trauma signature for humanity and the fear. But then on the higher aspects, this is about where we realize we are one collective organism. It's the oneness, which is really hard for the incarnating ego to accept, that we are one organism as humans, like as the human species, and we're all connected. because the ego wants to create separateness and hierarchy in a way. So this is actually where a lot of lessons will be coming up as well. Because if people are only interested in their own survival, and this will show up as a hard slap in the face as well, when the realization is that that's not what this is actually about. So yeah, I just thought I would share that little bit. There's much more that I could share on the story of, but I really want to bring in more of the mythology. That's where my heart's going to keep being. I mean, it's great to look at the mechanics here, but one of my dear friends, Mark Bentley, sort of said he stands by human design because it has been a major tool for a lot of people. But he also said, which I really agree with, that this is like, because this is known as the manual or the mechanics, that this will be in operation and be really helpful for people to understand. It's like a working manual for people to understand themselves. But this will remain, he thinks, popular. And then after 2027, when the rave children are born and we move more into the crystalline and the new earth and crystalline DNA, then this will start to fade away. This manual is not actually for those times. We'll move back into just the depth of, like, the Gene Keys transmissions are like deep personal legacies and personal stories that carry this magic that can last forever. And the same with mythology in astrology. It's something that, as humans evolve and change, and as their stories change, and as the collective change and grow, myth will always be in the backdrop, because we can always, myth always starts to evolve. Like, it doesn't start, but myth always evolves alongside of the human story. So that will never lose its importance. So I will want to be sharing more myth, because that's where the deep magic is. Okay, lots of love.